Let's get going. I have a bad habit of going way over time-wise, and I've been warned not to do that. So, in keeping with what I was, the sort of format about uniting the structure and function of healthcare, both to decrease these bad infections and to save money. So, let's talk about the patient as a bioindicator for the building. So I think these little blue booby feet birds, the feet turn a different color if something goes wrong, I'm not sure, but that was a pretty cool picture. So what is a bioindicator? And why is a patient a great bioindicator for how successful a building is? So a bioindicator is a biological species whose population can be used to monitor the health of the ecosystem or the environment. So we're going to be looking at patient outcome as a way to take a look at the building. And so Don Goldman did some discussion about using human health and disease as an indicator of the blankets and the poker table game. We're going to take that same approach with another study that also involves the some of the DNA sequencing testing that Jeff just told us about. So, since I can't go on and on forever, I've broken this into 4 parts. So we have a problem. It's manifested in hospitals, for starters, with HAIs. We have, thankfully, these new tools that Jeff told us about. We also have some amazing statistical analysis capabilities that enable us to take a huge amount of patient data, correlate it with a huge amount of building data, as well as the DNA, the PCR, and next generation sequencing data. So from that, we have new understanding. Then we're going to talk, if I have time, a little bit about what happens with different conditions indoors, and where should we go from here. So just 4 parts. So Ken Dickerman modified Winston Churchill's statement. Ken Dickerman was the design architect for the VA hospitals. He said, "We shape our buildings, then they kill us." That's a really scary thought, and is that true? Something's going wrong with public health, with our health. We have these acute infections in hospitals. We have the reemergence of infectious diseases that we thought were off the map. Cholera is coming back, the resistant strains of tuberculosis and other organisms. Autoimmune diseases are on the rise. Lupus. What are some other autoimmune diseases? Good. Well, so that's an allergic disease, yes. Crohn's. I'm blanking on all the autoimmune diseases, but even like some of the, colitis, yeah. Some of the dermatological problems are autoimmune. Lou Gehrig's disease is autoimmune. But anyway, they're on the rise. So we have chronic infections going up, chronic diseases, autoimmune diseases, acute infections in hospitals. So what is going on? So if we were to design a study in a hospital, again, think about uniting the structure of the hospital, the function of medicine. We wanted to monitor whether our hospital is doing well. What would we monitor? What is the most important metric in a hospital? Or I would say in any building that has people in it. So we monitor building energy consumption. You know, I've been in the basement of hospitals and the meters are running. We look at hospital profit and loss. Hospitals go out of business or they become bigger conglomerations to save money. Clinician happiness, in the operating room, are the clinicians comfortable? Turn heat way down, keep them cool with all the layers of gowns. What's another metric? You need to what? Patient satisfaction or patient outcomes. So that's Chris Green. Chris, that's exactly what I agree with. Interestingly, sometimes patient satisfaction is inversely correlated with outcome. So that's a whole other discussion. Getting what we think we want. But right, patient outcome. How about using that as a primary metric to assess the well-being of a hospital or of a building, period? Just to get away for a minute from focusing on energy and the other things that right now are more easily measured. So these infections, healthcare-associated infections, too many people get them. You guys raised your hands, and sadly we saw the numbers. Just in this room of people who know about this. So Don Goldman, who's at the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, is where they came up with this amazing tool called the Global Trigger Tool, which showed that hospitals only report a small percentage of the infections that were revealed with this tool. So I'm not going to put any numbers up here, like X%. A lot of people are dying from these infections or having longer hospital stays. So I was part of a study that was a little over a year. It was in the the Chicago area. So we monitored indoor conditions in patient rooms, not the OR, but in patient rooms and the adjoining nurse stations. We did this starting right when the hospital opened, and we went on for a little over a year. Meanwhile, another team mapped the movement of bacteria with some of the techniques that Jeff talked about. And we were looking at the taxonomy, not the function. So we monitored a bunch of conditions in the patient room, we mapped the bacterial communities, and then we tracked patient HAIs, healthcare-associated infections, new infections in those spaces. Does that make sense? So sort of 3 tiers, and I'm not going to really talk about this part. It actually was just published. It came out in Science 3 days ago. But I was not myself involved in the genetic analysis. So I'm not going to talk about that part. So the hospital was a brand new hospital. It was LEED silver, had a green roof. Beautiful building. The study entailed 10 patient rooms over a year. So this was on one floor. We had 5 patient rooms on one floor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 on the floor below. Half the rooms were for oncology patients, so they might have had immunosuppression going on from their medication or from their cancer. And 5 were just med-surg rooms, so your average person coming in with a appendicitis. We had no pediatrics, no psychiatry, no OBGYN. So all the rooms were single rooms, private bathrooms. They were all the same handed. They had vestibules. So 5 rooms on one floor and 5 on another floor. So that's a patient. That's not a root cause analysis diagram. So this is just to show, so the patient is kind of like a petri dish, although as Don and Jeff pointed out, it's not really an empty petri dish because we all have organisms. But we measured all of these different environmental parameters about every half hour for a year. So we had about 8 million data points for the environment. So CO2 levels, so that also indicates outdoor ventilation, the lighting, temperature. So we had we tracked hand hygiene. We had an infrared sensor, as well as a video monitor. So we didn't have a human being influencing the outcome, but we did monitor. And I think we got more accurate results that way. Anyway, room air changes. We had clinical and staff visitors people coming in and out of the room. We measured indoor and outdoor relative humidity and absolute humidity, outdoor air fractions, and room pressurizations. So we had not quite 300 patients in these rooms during this period of time. And we had a lot of data points for the environment. So what do you guys think the parameters were that were most closely correlated, statistically significantly correlated with patient infections? Like hand hygiene or what? Come on, guys. Absolute or relative? Relative humidity, what did you say? Hand hygiene? Don would say hand, what? So the level of acuity, that's a good point. And so that was sort of controlled for within the study by having the two groups of patient rooms. So, and we weren't in an ICU, we weren't comparing an ICU to med-surg. So the level of acuity was controlled by the mix of patient rooms and by the length of the study. What?
Air changes.
I can't hear you.
Air changes.
Air changes, okay, that's a big one that we hear about. Any other thoughts from the right, left side of the room? No? Come over here. Find somebody who's asleep. Howie, what do you think? Okay, committee. So, for the patient part, we found that, and I'm not going to tell you the hospital, because they would not be happy with having all of you know. And this is a great hospital, but 15% of the patients got new infections. And so these infections were gleaned from the medical records using the global trigger tool. And so these are some direct quotes from the records. So 15% got infections. So you can see there's some bacteria, mostly bacterial infections here, a few viral. Sometimes the organism wasn't specified in the medical records. But you can see there's sort of a range. Skin infections, colitis, which could be C. diff. Patient with an indwelling line, either intravenous or arterial line, that then got a skin infection. So you can read down if you want to. So, of all of the parameters, relative humidity was the one which was, changes in relative humidity was the one that was statistically significantly related to the incidence of HAIs. So on the x-axis, so here you do have to look at the axes. And like what Jeff said, we have, so winter time, so January into the summer, back into January. The blue line is the average relative humidity in the 10 patient rooms. And the red columns, the standard deviation bars didn't come through. So the red columns show the number of healthcare associated infections. And you can see the relative humidity only ranged from, what, like a little less than 32 to approaching 42. It made a big difference. So this is, we didn't believe this. We thought there's another confounding factor. Is it flu season? Is it temperature? So we, in our statistical analysis, we isolated all the confounding variables so that what we ended up measuring was the independent variable associated with HAIs. Louis says it's too dry in this room. He's leaving. So this was actually huge information. This just shows you the relative humidity in the 10 rooms was about the same. So the conclusion is, as the relative humidity approached 42% in this hospital, patient infections dropped. So this just shows you that it was significant to p less than 0.02. Oh, wait a second here. Okay, we'll keep, so, whoa, stop. So now I just wanted to show you what is in the air that we can't see with the naked eye. And this animated video is actually from Jeff's group from the University of Oregon lab. Let me see. Okay, so now, oops. How do I do this? Graham? Oh, there it is. Okay, so as I'm talking, little droplets are going through my mouth that have bacteria, viruses, fungal organisms in droplets. If I were to cough or sneeze, about 40,000 would come out. I'm not sick, so they're hopefully not pathogens, they're just microbes. Meanwhile, stuff is shedding off of our skin, and depending on the turbulence of the air, and depending on the relative humidity of the air, these particles are spreading around. You can see that this woman's digestive system is lit up because there are multiple microbes in our GI tract that can communicate with the air, and I won't specify how. You can figure it out. Where's my dog? Speaking of, oh, thanks, Steve. So organisms on the outside can go in, as Jeff talked about, with the diversity. Organisms that are on the inside, depending on how tightly sealed the building is, may stay inside and change according to how the building is designed and managed. So what organisms are in these droplets or are in the air, and what effect do they have on us? So it's easier to think about something, it's easier to study and monitor and control something when we can see it. You know, when the microscope was discovered, we then could, you didn't get sick because you had a bad thought about your mother. You got sick maybe because it was related to these organisms on your hands. So when the microscope was invented, we had a whole new concept of disease. The telescope showed us that we're not the only planet in the whole galaxy, heaven forbid. No, what I'm calling the genoscope are these DNA tools that Jeff has been talking about. And these DNA and RNA sequencing tools allow us to see like the microbial fingerprint of the environment. And it ends up that only about 10% of organisms show up in a petri dish, in a culture. So when you put a petri dish in a room to assess the organisms that might be in the air, you're only getting a small fraction. Most of the microbes are either just hang out with us and maybe good, maybe just neutral. Many are very good for us. And some microbes are pathogens, or they cause illness. So let's talk about the results of that study that show that the dry air was related to patient HAIs. So we all need water. We need water to breathe, to get rid of CO2, get in oxygen. We need water to digest our food. We need water to keep our skin intact. Does anyone recognize this young man? This is my son. How he's shaking his head. We need water for our immune system to get trained up. So, how are you shaking your head? On a winter day when you're dressed, how much of your epithelium do you think is relating to the air? Like in, say, in square inches or square feet? So Howie's not going to answer the question, basically. Who will give me an estimate about how much their epithelium is communicating with the air? What, Tracy?
In the winter, 1 square foot.
So Tracy says when she's dressed in the wintertime, she has about 1 square feet communicating with the air of her body. Okay, so I think Tracy's thinking about her face and her hands. What about our nose, our throat, our sinuses, our respiratory tract, all the way down into the little air sacs where gas exchange occurs, the alveoli? So in keeping with the metaphor, it's about half of a tennis court. So for someone my size, I have about that much surface area that's being influenced by the air. I love this. This slide really drives it home to me because, the universe likes equilibrium. Everything to be uniform. It's like when you have your teenage kid and you put the clothes away in their bureau drawer and then half an hour later there's an even layer of clothes. That's equilibrium. So when you have dry indoor air and you're a nice, juicy human being, what's going to happen? As the universe, the laws of thermodynamics move towards equilibrium, it's not anything I should take personally, but the room is going to take moisture from me. So what are the influences of that water loss? What are the influences of dry indoor air? So we're going to talk, I can't remember when I started, Mike. What time do I have to stop? When? 10 minutes? 10 minutes. Okay, so how does mild dehydration affect us? So sitting in a room with relative humidity 20%, we are 1% dehydrated in 8 hours. Our urine hasn't even begun to get darker. We don't even feel thirsty yet at this degree of dehydration. But it's already impacting us. So our brain, our performance, our defense against infections and allergies, and our skin integrity. So this slide is pretty amazing. This is a slide from the military. It's the same person who was hanging out at 30% relative humidity for about 20 hours, and then at 50% relative humidity. This is a functional MRI that measures water movement. In the blow-up, you can see the relative degree of neurotransmitter activity. So as you can see, in a drier room, the brain volume diminishes. And if you had a cross-section, you can actually see the cracks in between the cerebral cortex and sulci. You can see them large. Versus at 50% relative humidity, there's robust activity with the neurotransmitters. And this is interesting, I think, because if you think about, I won't ask if anyone's on an antidepressant, that's too personal. But most antidepressants are medications that increase the activity of the synapses. So if you think about it, you're in a dry room and you're diminishing the activity, meanwhile you're battling it out with your antidepressant to increase the activity. It's a bit of a push-pull. So again, the military studies where the military really puts a price tag on function, so they measure it, shows that just a 1% decrease, again, you won't even feel this. They've done studies that show your concentration, your thinking, short-term memory, reaction times, visual motor tracking are all significantly diminished at this mild degree of dehydration. So what about our respiratory system? What happens to all that surface area that we talked about? So we have like this layer of mucus that lines our respiratory tract from the trachea down, not quite all the way down to the alveoli. And this mucus has waving in the mucus, these little hairs called cilia that are constantly washing upwards so that stuff that you breathe doesn't get way down into your lungs. Because once things get into your lungs, like say bacteria, it only has to cross one membrane before it's in your blood. And that's a bloodstream infection is sepsis, which we've probably heard about. And there are other differences as well, such as the characteristics of the organism. But in general, it'd be better to have stuff in your nose and get a sinus infection than to have cilia and a mucus layer that's not functional and have these particles getting down into your lungs where you get a lot sicker. And there's actually an interesting study with cystic fibrosis kids that shows that even a 6% increase in the viscosity of their mucus increases their infection rate. And that was controlling for other immunological factors. So I don't want to lose you in the details. So dry air, thick mucus, cilia don't work, stuff gets into your lungs. Your skin is important. How many people, when they fly in the airplane, their skin gets dry? That feels bad. So that's a serious thing. Your skin is an important barrier. It's important as a normal barrier, and your skin health is important in wound healing. So this is just a diagram that shows this is your epidermis, the top layer, and then the lower layers. So when you're well hydrated, the top epidermal layer is actually intact and it controls water loss. Versus when your skin is dry and cracked, it's sort of a vicious cycle because there's more water loss. So these are biopsies of skin. This shows a nice intact epidermis, and this shows the epidermis that's peeling off. But what's another thing that's really interesting? What are these little, and Raul and Don cannot answer this, but what are these little dots here in the dry skin? Gee, you can answer if you want. So what do you think those dots are?
That's no. That's no.
Dead cells? It's closed.
Air pockets.
What?
Air pockets.
Air pockets? What did you say?
Air pockets.
Air pockets. So yes, I'm talking about a little dark dots. Air pocket. My husband thought dirt, which it isn't. So Raul, what do you think they are? Raul's a physicist.
Yeah.
What?
Inflammatory white cells.
Yeah. So very good. So they're the nuclei of inflammatory cells. So what it's showing is that when your skin is cracked and dry, you know, it's associated with higher levels of inflammation. And this is a study that came out in Nature. Oh, I put my Nature over there. Nature is a wonderful journal for basic science. And every week I'm learning new things about the environment and human health. But this slide shows that, so here's the top, here's your epidermis, there's the air. When you have cracked skin, these particles, allergens or microbes, some of which are going to be pathogens, can get down into the deeper layers of your epidermis and below and begin to set up an inflammatory reaction. So it's not just trivial like, oh, my cuticles are dry. You know, this is dry indoor air and the effects on your skin can be the beginning of a cascade of allergic events or infectious events. So this is for Don and Raul. This just shows that the inflammatory markers in our blood are much higher in the dry seasons. And we could talk about and argue about cause and effect, but there is a relationship between inflammation and dry air. Oh yeah, so how about our corneas? So a study in Australia showed that when a pilot with 20/20 vision begins the flight, they're seeing clearly. If the flight's more than 6 hours, their vision deteriorates to about 20/60, which I didn't show the landing, but here's kind of where their vision is at. So what happens? So normal cornea in a well-humidified environment has a nice, smooth cornea, and then 30 days at 20%. Tracy, this is probably why you were digging at your eyes, because you thought that your dry eye was a contact lens. But over time, this is a pingueculum or a pterygium. You can get, probably some of you have mild forms of this if you're outdoors a lot, in like dry air. And so what about skin in children, very young and very old, or older, you know, where the fluid losses through the skin can be greater. Babies don't have so much control over their intake and over their, you know, how well dressed they are, and elderly people have very thin skin. So you think about, okay, what's the impact of dry air in assisted living? This is a study that we're doing in Vermont. We're looking at indoor air conditions and infections, pressure sores, falls, and we're also looking at changes in cognition. And we're not ready to publish yet. We're still doing this study, but again, we're seeing this correlation, not only with norovirus, which Don talked about, but with some of these other problems that the elderly have, such as falls and the indoor relative humidity. We're doing a study we're writing a grant, Jeff, myself, and some other people who do a study in Kaiser Permanente hospitals, where Raul is looking at patient outcome in indoor air. So we're doing more studies. We need more data on this, but right now it's looking as though, for a multitude of reasons, dry indoor air is harmful to patient outcome. I'm going to quickly, oh yeah, this is what MIT does. They sit around and like do video strokes. Harvard, we do other things. But I'm gonna, as I talk, droplets come out about 100 microns in diameter. Depending on how much moisture there is in the air, these droplets will shrink. And again, Don talked about this, but in dry indoor air, you can get a droplet nuclei all the way down to half a micron. And we now know from the DNA studies, I think Don's data was a little old school on this, maybe? Teasing you, Don. But we have different results.
Good or bad?
Oh, very good point. He said is old school, good or bad. He's a Harvard man. Got a good answer. But we found that the organisms in these droplet nuclei have been recovered 21 years later, and they're still viable. So, you think about evolution. When something is in a hostile environment, for example, an organism in a droplet, and a spore forms, that increases the survival, in some cases, of the organism. They found living organisms in the bottom of volcanoes in an incredibly hostile environment. So if you culture these organisms in a petri dish, you may not see them, but if you're able to do the genetic analysis and see whether or not they're viable organisms, you may get a more complete picture. I'm going to skip along because, so this is the meningitis belt in Africa. This is the same Neisseria meningitis that Dr. Goldman spoke about. So there's this belt in Africa called the meningitis belt. And when the dry weather comes, they have meningitis outbreaks. And it's so predictable, they actually time the delivery of their medical supplies by the weather forecast. And this is not a good disease. This is a really bad disease. The literature says once the outdoor humidity reaches 40%, the epidemic stops. I didn't write that. That's in the extensive amount of literature about this. And this graph just shows that as the air becomes dry, as the humidity falls, the disease rate goes up. But what I find really interesting are these gray columns. So has anyone ever gone to the hospital and they've done like a nasal swab to see if you have MRSA? Yeah. So if you do have it in your nose, you're called a carrier. As you can see, as the humidity goes back up, the carrier state rises, but the disease state falls. So I don't know how to explain this myself, but it raises the question in my mind of if an organism is trapped in your nose, the well-hydrated mucus, chances are you're going to swallow it. It's going to become part of your digestive system microbiome. Versus if in dry air, if you inhale that particle, you're going to have a different outcome. So I look at this graph, and I don't have this answer, but I say, so is there a relationship between this increase in autoimmune diseases and the way we're managing the dry indoor air of our buildings? Like Jeff said, we spend 90% of our time indoors. Chronic diseases are on the rise. Some acute diseases are on the rise. Indoor air is generally very dry. Is there a connection? And I don't think we can really fully answer that unless we begin to use health metrics as a way of assessing our buildings. So who recognizes the Sterling? Yay! Big smile from David. So this is a study from 1985. It's a result of 12 clinical studies. The black bars show the degree of problem. So big, thick black bar means big problem. So we have bacteria, viruses, respiratory infections, allergies, ozone, relative humidity on the bottom. Sorry, I did this too fast. There's a sweet spot between 40 and 60% indoor relative humidity, or relative humidity. The sweet spot is associated with less disease, fewer problems. But in reality, we don't keep it really bad. So building people say, well, let's just dry out the air. Can't really go too dry. But for the occupants, that's not good. And there are reasons for that. And I don't have time to show the slides about whether or not mold can actually draw moisture out of the air. Does anyone want to guess? Can mold draw moisture? I see some enthusiastic yeses. Well, again, in the military in World War II, they did studies to say, to ask, we want to store these food goods and we want to store stuff before we send them overseas. We want to know what causes mold. Is it moisture in the air or is it substrate liquid? And so these really thorough studies show that it's, unless you're up to 85% relative humidity, you need substrate liquid. You need water in your carpet or liquid water. Mold cannot extract water out of the air. So again, if you have a poorly insulated building, it's sort of one and the same. But the solution may be to insulate your building better. And I don't have time to go into all that about R values. But what I wanted to get to is a financial picture. So this is that hospital where we did this study. So these are the 6 most common healthcare-associated infections: C. diff, Clostridium difficile, methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, ventilator-associated pneumonia, central line-related bloodstream infections, post-op infections. So this poor hospital, 250-bed hospital, in 1 year lost $15 million, which is now non-reimbursable if they report it as an infection. $15 million from those infections. And they tied up 11,000 patient days with non-reimbursable illnesses, patients that they weren't getting paid for. So that's a lot of money. Anyone here manage hospital finances? That's a lot of money. Oh, Raul, what are you thinking?
That's a lot.
A lot.
148 catheter-related, is that what that CRDS?
Yes, and Raul, this is not with voluntary reporting. This is with mining 4 clinicians using the global trigger tool.
Yeah, that's 12 a month. That is astronomical.
Is that a lot or a
That is
little?
a lot. 0 to 1 and a quarter is considered a lot.
It's a lot. But even if you want to lower the numbers, it's still a lot of money that's being lost. So what if you just decrease these infections by 20%? How much money would that hospital save? So again, looking at the study I showed you at the Chicago hospital, where we related indoor air humidity to patient infections, it's quite reasonable to say, okay, what happens if we decrease our infection rate by 20%? So this is a hard to read from the back slide, just showing that even if you just consider penalties from this CMS reimbursement penalties that a hospital experiences, let's see, along with, so you have increased revenue if you decrease your HAIs, you avoid these penalties that are now being leveraged on hospitals. But I didn't even include litigation costs because that's a whole other project to try to uncover how much a hospital pays for lawsuits. So if you offset those losses with investing in, and I think this is a very expensive system, I think this is unreasonably expensive, but I was trying to not do this chart in my favor. So if you put in the super expensive system, you still get an ROI of 500% the first quarter, just by decreasing your HAIs 20%. And Raul can talk probably more, with more business education and lingo than I can about this, but you have a significant savings, just in case you can't see it there. So another interesting factor is, we spend a lot of energy on room air changes in hospitals. But there's studies now that show that if you properly humidify your hospital air, you can turn down the room air changes. So for example, in an OR, where you have 20 room air changes an hour, if you could decrease your room air changes and save the energy from that, you'll be moving in the right direction, both in terms of infection control and energy sustainability. So it may be counterintuitive, but if you properly humidify, say, the patient room, you turn down your room air changes, and you'll have less turbulence, you'll have less resuspension of organisms, and you will save energy consumption. So what's the bottom line here? We need to think about how we manage indoor air. Dry indoor air, whether it's from transmission of pathogens or from impairing our physiological defense systems, mechanisms, or both. Dry indoor air is harmful to human beings. You know, unlike the plant that can just sort of wilt in the dry air, we've got a skeleton. We can't just wilt. So we tend to draw apart, we tend to crack. Layers dehydrate that we need to defend ourselves against infections and multiple allergies. So this is why clinicians need to talk to building people need to talk to clinicians. Whether it's about dry indoor air or if it's about opening the windows and getting a more diverse microbiome like Jeff talked about. We need to have patient outcome help us understand what's going on in the building. And in office buildings, the same sort of principle applies. If you have certain conditions and your employees are always absent because they're sick or they're not performing well, we need to take a look at how the building's contributing to that. So this is just like, what do we do? What could you do? We need more data. We definitely need more data, everyone in this room can help collect data. Whether it's in your homes, your schools, where you work, or your hospital. Get the baseline. What's the baseline? How often are your kids out of school? Do they have asthma attacks? Are they having dermatitis or eczema? Monitor the relative humidity. Build a wet bulb, dry bulb hygrometer. It'll help you understand what relative humidity is. Get a baseline. Baseline of the building, baseline of human well-being, health. And then if you decide dry indoor air is a problem, get an appropriate humidifier. Get one that's hygienic and low energy. If you need to fix your envelope, your building envelope, I know this is wishful thinking because buildings, there's a lot of money needed to renovate envelopes. But maybe we need to start insulating more effectively. Then choose your systems wisely, and then monitor the outcome. So if you humidify your bedroom, do you have fewer colds? Do your kids have fewer missed days at school? Are you saving money on patient infections? You get the idea, right? Measure, implement a change if you want to, and then measure the outcome. So I do a lot of skydiving. I took the slide out of me doing a face plant. Say, if we don't begin to integrate these two areas, we're just going to do face plants. I took that one out. It was too bad, too embarrassing. But thank you.